Hi class, welcome to EdVantage. I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson-Delgado. Today we're going to be talking about anxiety disorders. Now, anxiety disorders, when we think of them, they are defined as an overwhelming apprehension and fear accompanied by an autonomic nervous system arousal. So this is your fight or flight system that is going off as you are experiencing some kind of distress. Now, there are three major types of anxiety disorders. There's generalized anxiety disorder, also called GAD. There's panic disorder and phobias. Now, it should be noted that in the DSM-4, there were two other anxiety disorders included in this category. Those have now been separated out in the DSM-5. So in the DSM-4, you will see generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, phobias, as well as obsessive compulsive disorder. This has now been moved to its own category in the DSM-5, and post-traumatic stress disorder has been moved to another category in the DSM-5. So when it comes to the three anxiety disorders, these are some of the criteria that we look at in order to diagnose someone with these different disorders. So with GAD, or generalized anxiety disorder, we're looking for chronic anxiety, restlessness, tiring easily, impaired concentration, irritability, increased muscle aches, and difficulty sleeping. Now, it's important to note that this should go on for 6 months or longer. So a lot of times when I'm talking to students, they'll talk about this kind of free-floating anxiety that they start to experience when they are under a lot of stress. And this can happen to us when we get into, let's say, finals week. We're going through finals or getting prepared for our finals, and we're really stressed out about that. And we find ourselves worrying about our grade. And then suddenly we find ourselves worrying about the health of our pet. And then we find ourselves worried about work. And then we find ourselves worried about the number of hours that we're working and how we're going to be able to pay bills. So you see, this is free-floating anxiety. We're worried about a lot of different things. That is one of the main characteristics of generalized anxiety disorder. And it is not uncommon to experience that when we are under a lot of stress, whether that's just for finals and yet all these other things are coming at us. The thing that we need to look at is this going on for 6 months or longer? That's when we start diagnosing generalized anxiety disorder. So it's not that you won't experience chronic anxiety, restlessness, tiring easily, impaired concentration, irritability, increased muscle aches, and or difficulty sleeping at times when you are under stress. It's that prolonged period of time that we're looking at when we diagnose someone with generalized anxiety disorder. Another disorder that we look at with anxiety disorders is panic disorder. And this is heart palpitations, sweating, trembling or shaking, shortness of breath or feeling like you're being smothered, a feeling of choking, chest pains or discomfort, nausea or abdominal distress, feeling dizzy, derealization, so not really feeling like you're in reality, fear of dying, and numbness. So we look at needing some of these criteria to fit, and basically this is a panic attack. And we're looking at someone who's having reoccurrent panic attacks for 1 month or longer. And again, these are typically reoccurrent. If someone has one panic attack, it can happen. So this is often the most common reason that someone will go to the emergency room thinking that they are having a heart attack when in fact they're not having a heart attack. So sometimes people will go to the emergency room thinking that they're having a heart attack. They'll do the workup to make sure that their heart is healthy, and in fact that they do find the heart is healthy. And then they will diagnose someone or talk to that person about the possibility of a panic attack or having panic disorder. Again, it's usually not just one panic attack. We're looking at something that lasts longer than a month, reoccurring longer than a month at a time. So you can have one panic attack and not be diagnosed with panic disorder, but that's not to say that you wouldn't be diagnosed with panic disorder. The important piece of this is this feeling of, or these feelings of extreme anxiety, and this is where the fight or flight system is incredible. This is a disorder that often goes along with agoraphobia. And you see that agoraphobia is under the phobias. Now, agoraphobia can be a separate category in and of itself, but it's often with panic disorder. So agoraphobia is anxiety about being in places or situations from which escape might be difficult or embarrassing, or in which help may not be available. So agoraphobia means fear of the marketplace. So literally being out can be very fearful for some people. These are individuals who often we find that haven't left their homes for a long period of time because they are afraid of leaving their house. Typically, they are afraid of leaving their house because they have experienced panic attacks. And how this might come about, it's not the same for everyone. We're all individuals, but how someone might develop agoraphobia or a phobia like this would be, let's say they have a panic attack in the grocery store. And so they have a panic attack and they're trying to figure out why and how they had this panic attack. And we want to control things. We've talked about that in this class. Having control really helps decrease the stress in our lives. And so, okay, I had a panic attack at the grocery store. I won't go to the grocery store. I won't go to that grocery store. And so slowly the world becomes smaller and smaller for this individual because the panic attack isn't being caused by going to the grocery store. It's an autonomic nervous system kind of misfiring that's happening. And so suddenly we start to become afraid. Now there's also agoraphobia where we're afraid of the marketplace itself. And that falls under phobia. We would treat these two together if someone has a panic disorder and agoraphobia. There's also specific phobias, things like objects or situations. So being afraid of going into an elevator would fall into a specific phobia. Being afraid of spiders would also fall into this category. Now, some people might have a phobia, but they don't seek treatment for that. So for example, if I'm kind of nervous around, let's say I have a phobia of scorpions, that's not my favorite thing. And living in the Southwest, I see a lot of scorpions. But I've lived over on the East Coast. There's not a lot of scorpions over there. So while I might be phobic, I'm not, but let's say I was phobic of scorpions, I might experience that distress in the Southwest more than I would on the East Coast. So we can see where situations can really play a factor into individuals' phobias and why people may not get treatment for their phobias. Another type of phobia is fear of embarrassment in social situations. This is a social phobia. One of the most common phobias is fear of public speaking. Many surveys have been done, and on many of those surveys, we find that people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death. And for those individuals where this impairs maybe their work or their life in some way, those are individuals that we would need to help seek treatment so that they could function at their job or do well. Barbara Streisand is one who is well known to have a fear of performing. And she actually was able to get treatment for her social phobia, and you can see she has a wonderful career. The other disorder that I'm going to talk about, now again, this used to be under the category of anxiety disorders. Now, obsessive compulsive disorder has its own category. Obsessive compulsive disorder are intrusive, repetitive, fearful thoughts. Now, these are the obsessions, urges to perform ritualistic behaviors. The most common fear for individuals who have obsessive compulsive disorder is a fear of germs. So often these obsessions are about germs. So the compulsion is the actions and repetitive and ritualistic behaviors. So if I have an obsession about germs, that's the most common obsession or fear that individuals report with obsessive compulsive disorder. Doesn't mean everybody has that fear who is diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, but it is the most common that we hear about. So if I have a fear of germs, I'm going to be obsessing, thinking about germs constantly and how they might affect me and what I need to do about those germs. And the compulsion is the need or the actual action of washing my hands or using hand sanitizer. And what happens with obsessive compulsive disorder is it also comes along with a lot of checking. So I don't trust that washing my hands one time is enough. I need to check and make sure I got everything off my hands, so I need to wash them again and again and again. And what happens is people will get stuck with obsessive compulsive disorder. They'll get stuck in a loop, and it goes over and over again. You think about the germs, you wash the hands. You think about the germs, you wash the hands. And this gets stuck in a loop, and oftentimes there's a certain number that individuals, and it's individual for each person, they'll have different numbers. They need to wash their hands 15 times. They need to check the door 16 times. They'll have specific numbers that they need in order for that anxiety to kind of go away. This can really impact someone's life. People have washed their hands just raw. People are unable to finish their work because they keep checking over and over again, and they can't quite turn in what it is that they have tried to complete. Or they have difficulty leaving their home because they're constantly checking to make sure that the door is locked. So it's this loop of obsessions and compulsions that is different about obsessive compulsive disorder, and one of the reasons that it was put in its own category. We know that there are a lot of reasons for the anxiety disorders. They include psychological issues with faulty cognitions and maladaptive learning. So learning from our environment, maybe we learned something in a maladaptive way, something that wasn't healthy for us. Thinking of things in a different way, especially with the phobias of being afraid of the spider, knowing that it could harm you, but it's so far away, it's really not going to harm you. But those faulty cognitions of exaggerating things and exaggerating maybe the harm that could come. There's also some biological pieces that we look at. We know with evolution and genetics, as well as brain functioning and biochemistry are also different. With anxiety disorders, we often see where the GABA is at low levels, so we want to increase the amount of GABA with someone. We might do that with medication. Evolution, especially with the phobias, some of the most common phobias are things like fear of heights, fear of spiders, fear of snakes. It makes sense that we would be cautious around snakes. It makes sense that we would be cautious around heights, because that really is a threat to us and to our lives. But it's the exaggeration of the phobia or the panic attack that may come along with that, the panic that someone might feel. That's where it's exaggerated and where there could be an evolutionary kind of support to some of the fear that we experience, but tipping it over into a phobia. There's also sociocultural issues that we look at. Environmental stressors, cultural socialization such as modeling or observational learning. Maybe we've seen mom or dad be very afraid of dogs or something like that, and now we've grown up afraid of dogs, and that might turn into a phobia for us as well. So this is just some information about the anxiety disorders. I really encourage you to do some more reading and learning on your own. I hope this video has helped. Thank you for watching. Please click on the EdVantage logo to subscribe.